The red moon of Selvaris had two suns, one of which was always just a little too smug about its brightness. Our ship, the Indigo Echo Asterisk, cut through the upper atmosphere like a stubborn spoon through half-frozen dessert, bucking slightly as the ion stabilizers adjusted to local gravity. I was not supposed to be on this mission. Technically, I was on leave, scheduled for a quiet vacation involving beach holograms, a mildly inebriated dolphin AI named Craig, and a large quantity of cheese-based snacks. But no, Captain Boren had volunteered me with all the subtlety of a thrown boot. Apparently, the Queen of the Inari had requested me specifically. That was suspicious, since I'd never met her. At the time, I assumed it was a clerical error. Maybe they'd meant Commander Thuris, tall, well-spoken, striking jawline you could slice nanofilm with. Not me. I'm Lieutenant Darren Holt. Special skills include talking my way out of paperwork, imitating the ship's coffee machine, and surviving high-stakes diplomacy by pretending to be slightly dumber than I am. It works more often than you'd think. We touched down in a spire-shaped docking platform bristling with silver antennae and translucent banners that shimmered in the sulfuric breeze. The Inari greeted us with that unsettling grace only species with double-jointed everything can manage. They looked human at first glance, tall, lithe, eyes flecked with metallic hues, but their ears gave them away. Long, arched elegantly like they were tuned to frequencies humans couldn't hear. Some of them had small, glowing vines coiled around their wrists, a fashion statement or maybe just sentient jewelry. Hard to tell. And then she entered. Queen Lysarai of the Ninth Spiral didn't walk. She glided. Her robes followed a half-second behind her as if space-time itself had to catch up. Her presence carried weight, the kind that bent attention around her like gravity. Her ears were the longest in the hall, adorned with silver rings that hovered a few millimeters above the skin. She had eyes the color of solar flares viewed through ice, and a smile that suggested she'd read every file about me and still decided to proceed. "Lieutenant Holt," she said in Galactic Common with a voice that tasted like dusk and ozone, "you have returned to me something priceless." I bowed awkwardly, half expecting to knock over a ceremonial urn with my elbow. "I just brought back your diplomat, ma'am. Standard rescue op. Didn't even lose a limb this time." She tilted her head, studying me like a scientist wondering if her pet bacteria just developed jazz. "Nonetheless, it is custom among my people to reward such acts with a token of deepest gratitude." From a curved pedestal beside her, an advisor stepped forward holding a small case. When opened, it revealed a ring, smooth, dark, and clearly not made from any earth metal. It shimmered in a way that seemed to sidestep optics entirely, like it was being seen directly by the soul. I took it with a nervous chuckle. "Wow, this is something," I said, slipping it onto my finger because that's what you do when handed mysterious alien jewelry in front of royalty and 20 armed guards. "Thank you. I'll, treasure it forever." A hush fell over the room. One of the advisors gasped. An actual dramatic gasp, hand to mouth and everything. A soldier near the door dropped to one knee, followed by the rest in a synchronized motion that looked rehearsed but was clearly spontaneous. Queen Lysarai blinked once slowly, then stepped forward with the unhurried certainty of someone whose entire court had just watched her life change. "Oh dear," she said, her voice amused but laced with something deeper. "You have accepted." "Accepted what?" I asked, suddenly aware that maybe I should have read the cultural appendix of the mission briefing instead of playing asteroid golf in the simulator. She gestured toward the ring. "That is not simply a gift, Lieutenant Holt. Among the Inari, to accept the binding ring is to enter the Pact of Stars. It is sacred. It is eternal. It is." She paused, and I swear I saw the corners of her mouth twitch upward. "A marriage proposal." Silence, then my translator pinged a footnote so long it began buffering. "Wait, what?" I said. "You mean I just said yes?" "To me," she confirmed. "Publicly, with witnesses, quite the bold gesture, human." "I did not know you were so decisive." My brain ran diagnostics. Nothing came back functional. "But I thought it was just like a medal, a ceremonial thing. I thought you were being fancy." The soldiers began chanting something that my translator rendered as "Hail the Consort," while the queen extended her hand toward me. I didn't know what to do with it, so I high-fived her. This was apparently very inappropriate. The priest at the altar fainted. Two advisors looked at each other in quiet panic. "Please," I whispered, "there has to be a way out of this." "If you refuse," she said gently, "you challenge my honor. I will be forced to fight you in the Ritual of Blades until one of us submits. I'm really not into swordplay," Neither am I, she said, smiling more clearly now, which is why I chose you. I rubbed my forehead. The ring pulsed faintly, responding to my stress levels with a warm glow. So, I'm your fiancé. Technically, you are now crown consort-elect of the ninth spiral. I turned to Captain Boren, who'd been watching silently. You knew this might happen, didn't you? He shrugged. Mission success is mission success, Holt. Next vacation, I muttered. I'm hiding in a black hole. Lysarai leaned in. We shall begin preparations for the bonding ceremony at once. There will be music and fire dancers and a gravity feast. I blinked. A gravity feast. You eat while spinning through low-orbit rings. It's considered highly romantic. Messy, though. The Queen turned with a swish of star-silk robes, beckoning for me to follow. I hesitated, looked at the pulsing ring, and sighed. Well, I said to myself, at least she's got nice ears. And with that, I followed her toward the palace, awkward human steps echoing behind the measured grace of the most powerful woman on the moon, while the court erupted into ceremonial song, and I silently wondered what in the galaxy I had just gotten myself into. By the time the palace staff had finished measuring me for ceremonial robes, 3 hours, 14 tailors, and at least one argument over the placement of a decorative shoulder crystal, I had come to 2 conclusions. First, Inari fashion was designed by people with a deep love for asymmetry and a vendetta against breathable fabric. Second, I was now officially engaged to a woman whose idea of flirting involved interstellar treaties and giving me life-binding artifacts without warning. Queen Lysarai, for her part, was adapting to the situation with unsettling ease. She moved through palace halls like nothing had changed, issuing commands with that lilting cadence of command that made even the floor tiles sound like they were obeying her. I followed in her wake like a confused shadow, attracting stares from every guard, advisor, and sentient potted plant we passed. Don't ask. It blinked at me. At lunch, served on gravity-hovering plates, and accompanied by a choir of genetically modified birds that harmonized every time someone chewed. The Queen addressed the room with a casual grace. My consortling, she said, the word unfamiliar but clearly meant for me, has agreed to undergo the ritual of joining in 5 days' time. I choked on a mouthful of blue noodles. Wait, I said between coughs. I thought we were still in the engagement phase. She turned to me utterly composed. Among the Inari, engagement is a formality. The true test is the ritual, a joint ordeal. A union of spirit, mind, and sometimes light telepathy. Only then can the pact be sealed. I squinted. Define ordeal. The last couple rode a solar flare together and survived an assassination attempt mid-ceremony, she said lightly. We'll keep it simpler. Good, I nodded. Maybe just dinner and a movie. Lysarai smiled like she just heard a toddler mispronounce a complicated word. Of course, Darren. Though you should be aware, movie, in our language, translates to a multivisual experience requiring emotional synchronization and mandatory interpretive dance. Oh, I said, well, I've been told I have rhythm. She leaned in slightly. That was sarcasm, wasn't it? Painfully so. She laughed then, not the formal smile of diplomacy, but a genuine burst of delight. I'd heard it only once before, back on the pirate station, when she saw me fall headfirst into a crate of self-replicating fruit. It had the same effect now. The whole room stilled as if someone had changed the gravity settings. After lunch, her advisors cornered me. 2 of them were tall, 2 were glowing, and 1 seemed to be vibrating with suppressed anxiety. Lieutenant Holt, said the glowing one, whose name I still hadn't quite parsed due to it being half-harmonic tone. It is imperative that you familiarize yourself with Inari marital protocols. I was thinking a pamphlet, I offered. Instead, they handed me a neural briefing crystal roughly the size of a grapefruit. This will install necessary knowledge directly into your cortical interface. I don't have a cortical interface. They all stared at me. One advisor produced a small device, muttered something in Inari, and promptly jabbed it behind my ear. I yelped. Then a soft buzz, like someone whispering trivia directly into my soul. Congratulations, said the vibrating advisor. You are now semi-fluent in Inari symbolism, courtship etiquette, and 5 traditional wedding chants. I blinked as the room wobbled. Did you just upload a love song into my brain? It is customary, the glowing one replied. Over the next day and a half, I underwent what could generously be called groom training. I learned how to pronounce Lysarai's full ceremonial title without causing a diplomatic incident. I practiced not flinching during the forehead-touching greeting of her people. I was introduced to her extended family via holocall, during which her uncle challenged me to a debate on quantum ethics, and her grandmother insisted I eat a fermented root that tasted like betrayal. Meanwhile, the ring still glowed faintly on my finger, cool during rest, warm when I looked at her, and occasionally pulsing like it had its own heartbeat. I'd asked one of the palace scientists about it, a gentle creature named Vonar who resembled a floating jellyfish with glasses. It is partially symbiotic, Vonar had explained. It monitors emotional congruence. It deepens resonance with the bonded partner. Also, it can serve as a defensive weapon if your vitals spike during conflict. So it's a mood ring that shoots lasers. In essence, I was beginning to think the Inari had a very different idea of romance than I did. Lysarai continued treating me with a blend of formality and something stranger, curiosity, maybe, or affection cloaked in protocol. We dined together under artificial starlight, and once watched an interplanetary chess match in silence, during which she whispered critical analysis of the players' styles directly into my ear, making me shiver for reasons only partially related to strategy. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing behind all the opulence and pageantry. The palace guards had doubled in number. There were hushed conversations in corridors that stopped when I approached. And once late at night, I caught Lysarai on a private call, her face tight, her voice low, her tone nothing like the composed queen I'd seen before. I didn't ask. Yet. On the fourth evening, we took a walk through the sky gardens, where the plants grew in floating spirals and bioluminescent vines played music as you brushed past them. "You seem troubled," she said as we strolled through a corridor of humming blossoms. "I'm fine," I lied, just trying to process the fact that I might be the galaxy's most accidentally engaged man. She glanced at me sideways. "Regretful." I paused, confused, maybe a little overwhelmed, but not ungrateful. She stopped beside a levitating flower and touched its petals with reverence. "I could have rescinded it, you know, claimed a breach of ritual. Pretended you didn't understand. The court would have accepted it." I looked at her at the elegance that came so naturally, the power that shimmered beneath every word. "Why didn't you?" Her ears tilted slightly, a gesture I'd learned signified vulnerability. "Because you made me laugh," she said simply. Then, from the treetops above, a flash of red, a surveillance drone, cloaked but not invisible enough. She didn't flinch, but I felt the shift. The smile vanished. "We need to go," she said, her voice suddenly taut. "Let me guess," I muttered as I followed her into the shadows of the floating garden. "That wasn't one of yours." "No," she said, "it belongs to Kael'thar." I groaned. "Please tell me that's the Inari word for harmless sky squirrel." She drew a small blade from her sleeve. "It's the Inari word for my former suitor." My stomach dropped. "Of course it is." The drone exploded above us in a burst of purple static. So much for a quiet engagement. The morning after the drone incident began with sirens, fire, and a ceiling panel crashing 3 inches from my face. I rolled out of the ceremonial sleep pod, more comfortable than it looked, once you got used to being slowly swaddled by a warm, sentient fabric that hummed lullabies, and face-planted onto the obsidian floor. Somewhere in the distance, the palace's emergency AI was calmly announcing that everything was under control. It repeated the phrase with the soothing cadence of a bedtime story, even as another explosion rattled the walls and my toothbrush tried to stab me in self-defense mode. "Lysarai," I yelled, wrestling with a robe that had gone rigid in panic mode and now resembled a decorative origami tank. The door burst open before I could free myself. 2 guards entered, weapons drawn, helmets sweeping the room like a pair of paranoid owls. Behind them came Lysarai, dressed not in royal silks but in sleek combat armor that shimmered with layered force fields. She looked like a goddess who had just declared war and expected to win by lunchtime. "Darin," she said briskly, "are you wounded?" "Only emotionally," I replied, flinging the robe aside. "Your royal bed sheets tried to murder me." "That's a feature," she said. "The palace is under siege." "Oh, good," I said. I was worried things were getting too romantic. We moved quickly through the palace's inner corridors, the guards clearing the way with precise efficiency. The air was filled with acrid smoke and the tang of burning crystal. Outside the windows, I caught glimpses of sleek, dark ships circling like vultures, Kael'thar's private fleet, I guessed. Apparently, my not dying had really ticked him off. Lysarai led me into a command chamber hidden behind a false wall in the throne room, because of course the throne room had a secret bunker. Inside, A circular table projected a three-dimensional map of the palace grounds, overlaid with red markers swarming like angry fireflies. "Kael'thar has launched a coup," Lysarai said, her voice calm but sharp. "He believes I have been compromised by a soft, non-combatant species." "Is he talking about me?" She didn't answer, she didn't have to. I leaned on the table, trying not to panic. "Okay, quick question. What's the protocol when a genocidal warlord crashes your engagement party?" "Evacuation," she said, "and counterstrike." "Oh," I said, "so like. Space dodgeball." One of the guards muttered something in Inari that my brain chip translated as he jokes in the face of Doom asterisk. I took it as a compliment. Lysarai handed me a small metallic disc. "Your escape beacon. It will summon a personal transport if we're separated." "You say that like it's optional." She touched her fingers lightly to the side of my face. An Inari gesture I now knew meant asterisk, "I'm sorry, but I'm about to do something you won't like." Then she turned to the guards. "We head for the Hollow Reaches." The name alone gave me pause. The Hollow Reaches were a half-mythical part of Selvaris, spoken of in briefing files with lots of ominous footnotes. Floating ruins, unstable gravity, occasional time dilation. You know, the usual honeymoon getaway. We reached the hangar under fire. Blaster bolts carved holes into the air, leaving behind streams of flickering energy that fizzed like angry soda. I ducked behind a crate that was, according to a helpful label, full of ceremonial weaponized incense. The crate promptly exploded. "This way!" Lysarai shouted, yanking me by the arm. We sprinted across the hangar floor to a sleek vessel shaped like a stingray in mid-lunge. It hummed as we boarded, recognizing her genetic signature. Inside, everything was smooth curves and pulsing lights, like the interior of a living creature that had decided to moonlight as a luxury starship. As soon as we were seated, the ship launched. No countdown, no seatbelt warning, just raw acceleration that pinned me to the wall while the stars blurred outside. "I hate to be that guy," I said, peeling myself off the upholstery, "but where are we going exactly?" "To a place Kael'thar won't follow," she said. "He fears the Hollow Reaches. They distort time, reveal truths, challenge even the strongest minds." "Great," I said. "So we're headed to a haunted science maze. Fantastic." The ship spiraled through a narrow canyon that shimmered with gravitational warps. Outside, the terrain twisted in ways that defied traditional geometry, trees growing sideways, rivers flowing in cubes, mountains folding in and out of themselves like breathing lungs. It was beautiful and deeply wrong. The Hollow Reaches had once been the site of a massive Inari research facility, abandoned centuries ago after something went, in their words, epistemologically sideways. Scientists had attempted to manipulate the quantum structure of memory. Instead, they'd created a zone where reality occasionally sneezed. We landed on a floating platform anchored by flickering pylons. The moment I stepped off the ship, I felt it. The air was too still, the gravity just slightly off, like I weighed 99, 3% of what I should. My thoughts echoed inside my skull. My childhood cat's name, Mittens, briefly replaced the word door in my internal monologue. "This place is awful," I said cheerfully. Lysarai smirked. "It grows on you if it doesn't unmake you." "Comforting," I muttered, following her into the ruins. The architecture was all impossible angles and half-seen corridors that vanished when you looked away. Holographic ghosts flickered across the walls, recordings of long-dead researchers babbling equations and wedding vows in the same breath. My ring pulsed again, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat with eerie precision. "I feel like I'm being studied," I whispered. "You are," she said. "The Reaches test bonds, emotion, intention, the structure of connection. If we're truly compatible, it will allow a safe passage. And if not, we become part of the wallpaper." I stopped walking. "That was a joke, right?" She didn't answer, but she looked back and winked. We reached the central chamber. The chamber exploded into color. Brilliant blues, electric purples, and flashes of chartreuse that smelled suspiciously like overripe melon. A gravitational pulse knocked Kael'thar's soldiers off their feet as the crystal platform surged upward, lifting Lysarai and me out of the Hollow Reaches, central sanctum, and into a corridor of light that should not have existed in three-dimensional space. For a moment, I experienced what I can only describe as emotional vertigo. My thoughts unspooled into shimmering filaments, floating briefly alongside hers. She was worried. Not just about Kael'thar, or the political backlash of marrying a slightly sarcastic Earth-born lieutenant with a tendency to misplace his boots, but about me. My safety, my presence, the sudden intensity of our unlikely bond. I was about to say something halfway poetic, maybe even sweet, when the corridor dumped us out onto a platform suspended in what looked like the hollowed core of a dying star. Above us, stars spun in spirals. Below us, infinity blinked with the mild impatience of a sentient abyss. "Well," I said, adjusting my collar, which had decided to function as a small flag. "This is romantic, slightly apocalyptic, but romantic." Lycerai's lips curved. "It's the thought engine, the heart of the hollow reaches. It scans for truth, for intention. If we survive, it will show us the path back to Selvaris and the relic we need to complete the pact." "You know," I said, cautiously peering over the edge into what might have been the concept of Tuesday, "your people really know how to do sacred trials. On Earth, we do trust falls and relationship counseling." Suddenly, the air snapped. A ripple of distortion twisted toward us from the far end of the platform. Kael'thar. He stepped through a warping in the void, flanked by 2 spectral drones and wearing armor that hissed with stored energy. His eyes, iridescent and angry, locked on mine. "This is your consort," he growled at Lycerai, "a joke in human form." "Hey," I said, raising a hand. "I'll have you know I graduated top 63% in my class. And I once defused a space mine with a spoon." Kael'thar did not laugh, not even a chuckle. Tough crowd. "You've desecrated our legacy," he snarled, stepping forward. "You reject Inari purity for this." "I'm standing right here," I muttered. Lycerai stepped in front of me, her hand raised, her presence suddenly electric. "You insult the right of stars, you challenge the pact, you seek power, not unity." Kael'thar sneered. "I seek order." With that, he slammed his fists together and the platform trembled. Energy surged around him, coalescing into a massive construct, part armor, part beast, all very interested in murdering us. Lycerai turned to me. "We'll have to sync. Like emotionally. No mechanically." "Oh, good." She reached toward a crystalline control node embedded in the platform's edge. The ring on my hand pulsed once, twice, then shot out a thread of light that connected to hers. I felt a jolt of warmth, followed by a sudden flood of shared muscle memory. A command interface opened in my vision, projected directly onto my optic nerve. It read, "Inari Battle Pair Interface, version 9. For compatibility, questionable, initiate sync." I blinked twice for yes. The floor beneath us shifted, and from the void, something immense emerged. An ancient Inari war mech dormant until now. Its surface shimmered with memory metal, its limbs humming with untapped energy. The cockpit opened with a hiss. "Pilot 2, Lycerai called. Back left, don't touch anything orange." Naturally, I touched something orange immediately. The mech growled. I apologized. As the cockpit sealed, our consciousnesses merged. Not fully, but enough that I could feel her calculating, thinking, anticipating my every clumsy move before I made it. I got a mental flash of her opinion of my flying skills, and let's just say it included words I'm pretty sure weren't in the diplomatic glossary. Outside, Kael'thar activated his own mech, a jagged black monstrosity with a shape like a murder spider crossed with a cathedral. The 2 titans faced off on the glowing platform, energy crackling between them. "Okay," I said, "we've got this, right?" "Probably not," she replied, deadpan, "but your optimism is endearing." Combat in an Inari war mech isn't like piloting a ship or driving a tank. It's more like wrestling with physics while also emotionally bonding with a very aggressive house. Each limb responded to neural intention, but only if both pilots were in sync. I tried to punch. The mech waved politely. I tried again. It curtsied. Lycerai mentally shoved me into focus. "Stop trying, feel." I took a breath. Focused. This time when I moved, the mech mirrored me perfectly, and we dodged Kael'thar's first strike by a millisecond. We danced on the edge of the void, hurling energy blades and gravitational pulses at each other while the thought engine watched silently, recording every movement in some unknowable celestial logbook. I narrowly avoided being flattened by a spinning plasma flail by stumbling backward, into a control panel that triggered an unexpected defense mechanism. Soap. Yes. A high-pressure jet of fragrant nanotech soap sprayed Kael'thar's mech, briefly blinding its sensors and sending it skidding in foam. Lycerai froze. "Why is that even a feature?" "Sanitation protocol," I said. "Hygiene is half the battle." She laughed then, a full, delighted sound that distracted Kael'thar just long enough for us to land a direct hit to his core battery. His mech sparked, reeled, and staggered back, but he wasn't done. "Fools," he hissed, voice broadcast across the void. You think love is strength, it is weakness, it bends the knee, it compromises. Exactly, I said, it makes room. And sometimes it buys the wrong kind of cheese on purpose, because it makes the other person smile. Kael'thar launched his final attack, a massive gravity spike that began collapsing the platform around us. The thought engine flared in warning. We had one shot. Lysarai and I moved together, perfect in sync now. Our mech leapt into the air, soared over the collapsing edge, and delivered a spiraling, two-pilot strike directly into Kael'thar's chest plate. His mech crumpled like a deflated drama balloon and vanished into the abyss. Silence fell. Then, slowly, the thought engine chimed. The ring on my hand pulsed. A new path opened, an archway of light and memory revealing a relic hovering within. The asterisk crown of mine's asterisk, shaped like a constellation, glowing with potential. We D1, together. I slumped in the cockpit, grinning through the exhaustion. So, you still want to marry me, or? Lysarai leaned her head back, eyes gleaming. I'm beginning to suspect I might have chosen well. Well, I said, the ring fits. And somewhere beneath us, the hollow reaches sighed in cosmic amusement. The return to Selvaris was not triumphant. It was quiet. The Indigo Echo Asterisk, our emergency diplomatic vessel now doubling as a relic courier and accidental honeymoon shuttle, slid through the upper atmosphere like a whisper wrapped in stealth shielding. No parades, no banners, just low-orbit clouds and the rhythmic hum of long-range scanners checking for any remnants of Kael'thar's forces. The skies had been cleared, yes, but cleared in political terms was a long way from safe. Lysarai sat in the co-pilot's chair, watching the monitors as if the universe had personally offended her. Her long ears twitched slightly with every blip of static. I'd learned not to ask what the twitch meant. Apparently there were at least 7 distinct meanings, ranging from mild concern to I'm calculating 16 different strategies for planetary defense while pretending to be calm. Today I was guessing she was somewhere in the strategic brood zone. I leaned back, resting my feet on a console that immediately zapped me with a small warning spark. Still not the armrest, I muttered. It never will be, Lysarai said without turning. Somewhere in the galaxy there's a chair that loves me for who I am, I replied, and it has cup holders. That got the ghost of a smile, progress. The crown of mines hovered in the containment chamber behind us, spinning slowly in its energy cradle. It didn't look like much. A lattice of faintly glowing fragments, each one pulsing to a rhythm I couldn't hear but definitely felt. According to Lysarai, it wasn't just a symbol of royal authority. It was a kind of psychic lens, a tool once used by Inari queens to synchronize with their people during times of upheaval. It amplified will, channeled empathy. And in the hands of someone with a strong emotional link, it could unite minds, or, if misused, unravel them. Tell me again what happens if the crown decides we're not emotionally compatible, I asked. It will fragment, she said flatly. Possibly violently. Excellent, nothing says romantic commitment like potential cranial detonation. When we finally descended into the royal district, we were met not by cheering crowds or honor guards, but by a row of stiff-backed advisors, all dressed in their finest robes of soft crystal and woven flame. Their expressions were neutral in that way that said, we're definitely judging you, but we're too well-bred to show it asterisk. One of them stepped forward, hands folded, ears tilted precisely 20 degrees. A posture I'd come to understand meant asterisk courteously furious asterisk. Your Majesty, the advisor said, bowing, you return and with the human. Good observation, Kess, Lysarai said, striding past him. Anything else? Only that the High Council awaits your explanation. There are questions. There always are. And with that, we were back in the palace. Everything felt sharper than before, like the walls had been polished to a mirror sheen, and the air had been filtered of anything resembling warmth. Servants moved quickly. Guards watched everything. The shadows were full of expectations. We were ushered to the Chamber of Accord, which sounded friendly, but was basically a very elegant interrogation room. The council sat on raised platforms, each one in a semicircle, their robes forming a gradient from silver to indigo as you moved from junior to elder members. Their ears alone looked more judgmental than most of my old commanding officers. Lysarai stepped forward and I moved to stand beside her. One of the elders immediately raised a hand. The human may wait outside. No, Lysarai said. He may not. The silence that followed could have frozen suns. I cleared my throat. Hi, I'm Darren Holt, Crown Consort-elect, slightly nervous, mostly harmless. A few murmurs, Kess, the ever-helpful advisor, stepped in. Your Majesty, we do not question your authority, but there are doubts. The ritual was rushed. The hollow reaches, while ancient, are not recognized by all as legitimate grounds for unity. And this, he gestured vaguely toward me like I was an aggressive houseplint. This human has yet to prove himself before the people. He faced Kael'thar in combat, Lysarai said evenly. Accidentally, I added. I mostly aimed for the glowing parts and hoped he tripped. Another silence, a deeper one. Somewhere a servant coughed nervously and was escorted out with alarming speed. The crown must be tested, an elder finally said. If it truly recognizes your bond, we will not contest it. But until then, the pact remains in question. Lyserai's jaw tightened, mine nearly fell off. You want us to what exactly? I asked. Plug our brains into an ancient artifact in front of a judgmental space senate, and hope it doesn't explode. That is a crude but accurate summary, Kess said. Back in the ceremonial hall, cleaned, repaired, and now lit with soft blue flame, we stood beneath the ancient spire of vows. The crown was placed on a levitating dais between us, humming faintly like it had opinions about the proceedings. High Priestess Venara floated in on a platform of mist, carrying the ritual codex in one hand and a very large spoon in the other. That's the ceremonial conductor, Lysarai whispered when she saw my look. To stir the resonance field. Your culture continues to delight me. The High Priestess raised the codex. Step forward, place your hands on the crown, let your minds open. I hesitated. What if it doesn't like me? It won't destroy you, she said reassuringly. It will just sever your memories and return your essence to the starlight. I blinked, comforting. We placed our hands on the relic, time dilated. Thoughts, feelings, memories, not just mine, not just hers, but all of them, rushed through me in a wave of color and light. I saw Lysarai as a child, running through gravity fields with wild laughter. She saw me falling asleep in pilot training with a cheese sandwich stuck to my face. I felt her longing, her doubts, her sense of duty. She felt my confusion, my hope, the way I'd looked at her that day in the Sky Gardens and genuinely wondered how the hell someone like her could have chosen me. And then the crown glowed, blazed really. A pulse of light swept through the chamber. The air rang with something like music. The dais lifted, the artifact spun, and it didn't explode. Instead, it unfolded, revealing a new shape, a unity sigil. It hovered above us, then sank into the air like starlight dissolving into morning. The council gasped. Somewhere, Kess fainted. The High Priestess stepped forward and bowed low. The pact is sealed. The crown recognizes you. I looked at Lysarai. She looked at me. I guess this means we're really engaged, I said softly. She tilted her head. Now we begin the wedding preparations. I gulped. There's more. Oh yes, she said with a smile. There will be fireworks. Interplanetary guests, possibly a gravity duel. I groaned. Just once I'd like a quiet weekend. Lysarai took my hand. Not while you're married to a queen. And as the chamber filled with ceremonial song and the hum of something ancient and approving, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was home. Preparations for the royal union began promptly at 600 the next morning with a ceremonial gong that shook the floor, the windows, and quite possibly a few parallel dimensions. I sat bolt upright in my sleep pod, hair askew and mouth dry, convinced for a split second that we were under attack again. Then a chorus of harmonized chimes played a tune called Asterisk Dawn of the Binding Stars Asterisk, which sounded less like a wedding march and more like the theme song for a sentient battle cruiser about to initiate conquest. Through the haze of sleep, a palace drone hovered into my room and politely began spraying my entire body with a pre-ceremony enzyme mist that smelled like burnt citrus and responsibility. I waved it away and stumbled toward the wardrobe interface, which had been pre-programmed by Lyserai's fashion advisors. Today's selection was described as humble consort regalia, which turned out to be a full-body ensemble of iridescent threads, 6 intersecting sashes, and boots that whispered philosophical encouragement with every step. By the time I made it to the outer courtyard, the place had transformed. Floating pavilions shimmered with translucent banners, gently orbiting fountains hummed in celebratory resonance, and a group of Inari engineers were installing what looked suspiciously like a mobile singularity generator under the archway of the reception hall. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. A technician glanced up. "Temporal bubble stabilizes time perception for guests traveling from relativistically divergent sectors." "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't want Grandma arriving 37 years early." The palace was teeming with guests now, and I quickly lost count of how many species I didn't recognize. A delegation of tall, willow-limbed arcolith drifted in with synchronized gestures, followed by a compact swarm of crystalline beings who communicated via rhythm and light. At one point, I was introduced to a counselor whose body consisted entirely of vibrating geometric equations. I shook his. Variable. Lysarai found me hours later in the Hall of Celestial Appetizers, where I was having a one-sided conversation with a hovering tray of spicy, translucent cubes. "You've made friends," she said, approaching in ceremonial armor plated with living glyphs. Each time she moved, the glyphs shifted, telling the story of her reign in real time. I couldn't stop staring. "Well," I said, "I think I just offended a diplomat made of fungus. In my defense, it offered me a handshake, and I didn't know which part was the hand." Lysarai smiled, but her expression held tension beneath it. I could feel it now, like the ring on my finger had become more than just a symbol. It was attuned to her, to the bond between us. I felt the slight quiver of her thoughts, the gravity of expectation pulling around her like a cloak. "You're nervous," I said quietly. "I'm about to unite the fates of two civilizations," she replied. "Nervous is the polite word." "Do you want to sneak away?" I offered. "We could hijack a speeder and go get noodles." She laughed, a soft, genuine sound that lifted the pressure just a little. "Tempting, but no, I am Inari, I face what must be faced, besides." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "There's a matter I haven't shared yet." That got my attention. "There's been a development," she said, "with the ring." I glanced at it. It looked the same, still cool, dark, and faintly shimmering. "It's been pulsing with a new sequence," she explained. "One not encoded in our cultural tradition. The palace engineers believe it may be responding to something external. External like another ring. Or another signal from deep space." I blinked. Someone else proposed to me. Lysarai gave me a look. "It may be more serious than that. The artifact is ancient, far older than our current empire. It was inherited, yes, but its origins are less ceremonial than we believed. The engineers suspect it might be a beacon." My stomach dropped. "So I'm broadcasting. To someone or something." Of course I was. Why wouldn't I be? Should we not have put it on my finger? "It's too late now. The bond is sealed, but the timing is inconvenient." The stars were not supposed to move. Not like that. Not in patterns so precise they could only be intentional, flickering in a lattice that hummed with ancient geometry. As the constellations reassembled themselves into unknown sigils over the sky of Selvaris, the Unity platform quieted. Thousands of guests, dozens of species, the entire royal court, all turned upward. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The ring on my finger thrummed again, once, twice. Then it pulsed to a steady rhythm that felt too alive to be mechanical and too deep to be anything but cosmic. "It's not a flare," Lysarai said softly beside me. "It's not a signal, it's a asterisk response asterisk. A reply to something we hadn't known we were sending." The High Priestess stepped forward, her robes fluttering in a wind that no one else could feel. "This was not in the wedding script," she muttered. From behind the floating dais, palace technicians scrambled to isolate the anomaly. Readings spiked, sensors overloaded. The sky shivered, and then it arrived. A ripple of light, neither ship nor structure, pierced the atmosphere with zero kinetic force but infinite presence. A sphere, translucent and immense like the shell of a dying thought, hovered silently above the spire. Inside there was only light. And then shapes, and then eyes, no weapons, no language, only intention. Lysarai gripped my hand tightly. I realized she wasn't trying to protect me, she was anchoring herself. In that moment, the Queen of the Ninth Spiral was just a person standing in front of the unknown with someone she'd chosen to trust. The ring activated. A beam of energy lanced upward from our joined hands, intersecting the sphere's field. Symbols flickered between us and it, streaming like living code across the space between worlds. A language so old even the palace AI refused to speculate on it, and I understood it. Not fully, not with words, but with something older, like my bones remembered. Like the ring wasn't a ring but a relic placed on my finger because I could hear what others had forgotten. "Not a beacon," I whispered, "a key." Lysarai turned to me, eyes wide. "A key to what?" I swallowed. "Memory." The sphere spoke not with sound but through light and resonance directly into the marrow of everyone present. It projected images into the air. A time before the Inari, before Selvaris, before Earth, galaxies forming, guided. Species seeded, unity forged, and then forgotten. The ring was not Inari in origin, nor human. It was part of a network, an ancient matrix of bonds designed to keep intelligent life from unraveling into chaos. The ritual, the pact, the customs the Inari had built their culture around all echoes. Copies of a design left by the original architects of interstellar peace. And somehow I'd triggered it. The sphere's light pulsed once more. Then it simply dissolved, scattering into radiant dust that painted streaks across the sky like fresh constellations. In the aftermath, the silence was profound. Then Lysarai spoke, voice quiet and steady. Our ceremony was watched by more than we expected. Yeah, I said, breathless. No pressure, right? She laughed softly, but her fingers stayed laced with mine. The next days unfolded in slow waves. The council met. The relics were studied. The ring was carefully removed, examined, and returned, unchanged but somehow backslash. Clearer asterisk. The energy it once contained now flowed through us, no longer separate but shared. Even Kess bowed when he passed me in the corridor, though I couldn't tell if it was respect or mortal fear. Lysarai was changed, too, not in power but in presence. Softer in private, fiercer in council, more herself. I found her one evening in the sky garden, watching the new constellation the sphere had left behind. It's called the Vow Now, she said, pointing. Let me guess, I replied. You named it. It was voted on by the public. And somehow you won. I may have had help, she said with a mischievous glance. We stood in silence a while, listening to the soft hum of the vines and the wind threading through the levitating blossoms. For the first time since the day of the proposal that wasn't a proposal, there was no imminent threat, no crisis, just us. I never thought I'd end up here, I said. I was supposed to be on leave, you know, on a beach with cheese snacks. Do you regret it? She asked, almost hesitantly. I turned to her. No, I don't regret any of it, not the ring, not the war mech, not even the angry fungus ambassador. She laughed. That was entirely your fault. I shrugged. He did smell like betrayal. We sat together under the stars, those impossibly familiar, impossibly changed stars. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a human out of place. I felt like part of something bigger, not because of the ring, not even because of Lysarai, because I'd chosen to be here, to stay. And that meant something. In the days that followed, trade increased, protocols were updated. The Inari and Earth opened joint research into the sphere's language, discovering more echoes of the old architects across distant systems. There were whispers of others who bore rings like mine, scattered, dormant, waiting. But none of that changed the daily rhythm. Lysarai still teased me for snoring. I still pretended I knew how to operate palace tech.